Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Not you. You.
Me.
Welcome to our podcast. We're going to talk to you about how to have a great sex life in Jesus' name.
Amen.
So if you are a student or a teenager, you probably shouldn't watch this. Go talk to your parents about it. This is probably not for you. This is for married couples only, people. Viewer discretion advised.
Okay. Well, with that wonderful opener, let's jump in.
Great.
What you got to talk about?
So the good news is we love sex.
We do. Sex
with each
is
other.
Great.
Yes. And we're, a lot of times, you think the best sex is out there, Hollywood sex, have as much sex with all these people, blah, 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 blah. But the truth is, the best sex is married sex, Christian married sex. And I don't only love our sex life, but you love it too.
I do. And it's funny because I liked it from the beginning. But the longer we've been married, it has been something that I think both of us enjoy more and more and more. And I think we're both kind of blown away, honestly, because it's just like the longer we've been married, the more I'm like, so this is why God says to do it this way. You know what I mean? And for us, we waited until we were married to have sex, and we had some boundaries in dating to really protect that and to make sure that we didn't cross lines there. And I feel like that was really helpful. But we also read some books right before we got married that helped us actually communicate about what we were hoping for our sex life in marriage. And so I think that was really, really beneficial for that early season of marriage and figuring things out together. And I know that's controversial. Not everyone feels like reading books about sex is a good idea. You do have to be careful what books you're using. Yeah. I will caveat that with that comment. However, I think that ideology of like, oh, you'll figure it out together, maybe that works for some couples, but I think it's a protective if you have a good quality book. And I'm sure you're gonna on Sunday, I know you have a resource list, and maybe even link it
right here
because I think it was a really big deal for our sex life that we talk about our sex life, that it's not like this secret category where we can't communicate with each other, and that I think is a big part of why we both love it.
But if you had sex before marriage, it's not like you can't have a great sex life or something like that. Yeah.
No,
it's just, one helpful thing is we don't have to compare. Like, it's not like, oh, it was, am I as good as the last person you had sex with? Like, we're each other's best we got, that's all we know. And so that's a really a nice thing that happens when you wait. But, God can redeem, if you've had sex before with other people or anything like that, he can still help to bring great sex to your marriage right now.
I think that's a really important clarification, because as we're sharing our story, it isn't that. We did wait for each other and for marriage, but oh my goodness, 100% agree with you that a great sex life is so much more than we were virgins when we got married type of situation.
Yeah, and you can both be virgins when you get married and have a
terrible
sex life and get divorced. Or, it's just not a guarantee.
Yeah. I think that's big. And just knowing, because we've read a lot of books where there's this culture today where people feel like it's just all about being a virgin, like that's it. And then if you have done anything, you feel like you're dirty and you're used up. So might as well just go for it and do whatever, because my sex life, it's already broken. It's not good enough anymore. Yeah. And that is so not what God has for his people. And
so let's dive into that actually. Like one thing is, so great sex, you want to have an orgasm, you want to arouse each other, have all the foreplay, you want to get to climax and have an orgasm. It feels great. And but a lot of times we think like, oh, in sex, as long as the man, the husband had the orgasm, you great, you had a good job. But I feel like, biblical sex, Ephesians 5, husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church. And it says that he who, loves his wife loves his own body. And so, like, as you serve your spouse and you're loving them, part of great married sex, Christian sex, should be, my greatest joy in sex should not be, what can I get out of my wife? How can she make me feel good? How can I have great sex? But a Christian perspective on sex is, how can I have my wife have the greatest time in the bedroom with me? You know, how can I give her the greatest pleasure? My greatest satisfaction in sex should be when Mary is most pleasured, you know, and that should be what drives it. And so that just has to be a shift mindset. So if she's not enjoying sex, if she's not having an orgasm, you know, I don't want her just to pretend for me and be like, ooh, I'm so aroused, like this is great, when you're over there miserable and it's uncomfortable and it's painful. Like, I want to be able to have those hard conversations of like, hey, this position really hurts, or hey, like, you really stink right now. You need to take a shower for me to enjoy it. And that is sex is so vulnerable, and so you have to be really careful of how you say stuff, because you don't want to make the person feel like you're not good enough, or you're something, because you're completely naked and exposed, and so you have to be really careful of how you say things. Good point, but you still want to be able to have helpful conversations to have better sex. So.
I think that's such a good point, because I do think a lot of times conversations about sex, it is more like about the guys and what they're getting out of it. But we can tell in the way God designed us as women that it's meant for our enjoyment as well. Like he didn't have to create our anatomy in a way where we could have enjoyment, but he did. And you can't help but think that that was for a purpose. And Tanner and I, when we first got married, I had a hard time. Yeah,
for months. That. For months,
yes.
she couldn't, you know, go all the way and get to an orgasm, and
so it was really upsetting for both of us.
Yeah, we had all these concerns of like, am I a terrible lover? Like, why can't she get all the way there? Yeah. Like, am I doing this wrong? Am I an incompetent lover as a man? And for you, like, am I like biologically not capable? There's something wrong with me, you know?
Well, and honestly, part of that, I was really concerned. I had masturbated before we got married, and had struggled with that for several years, and had actually, by the grace of God, before we even met, that was not something that I was doing, and so thank you, Lord, for saving me. Not just masturbation, but I was struggling because I was reading some things that I shouldn't, and I was allowing my thought life to really go a direction that wasn't God honoring. But I think that situation really affected our sex life out the gate because of masturbation. And I know that in Christian spheres, there's different takes on whether that is okay or not okay, but I can tell you that my personal experience with masturbation was 100% not okay, and it was not God honoring in any way, and it did affect our marriage. But also, it wasn't just that. I had emotionally so much guilt that I piled on. We kissed before we got married, and I felt guilty about it. And here is this beautiful thing that we waited for each other, that we're married, and it was so exciting on our wedding night. Everything's new, and you know, it's just so cool for both of us. We had a great time, but that past and that guilt really kept haunting me. Of just we would kiss, and I would think about how we had kissed before we got married, and I actually don't think it was wrong for us to kiss before we got married, but I allowed it to be something because it had turned into something that was dominating my mindset, and I couldn't really enjoy fully our sex life because I had all this guilt, and I didn't even realize that's what it was. We read books, and we were trying to figure out what to do, and there was definitely tension there. And then long story short, Bev Leckie, who's just phenomenal, I went and met with her at church, and I don't even think I explained to her that I wasn't having orgasms and that her sex life was off. I think I was just telling her about how I was struggling emotionally. And she talked to me, and she was like, Mary, you have to be able to forgive yourself. God has forgiven you. And whether this was a right action or a wrong action, you can just present it to God and leave it with him. And so I remember I left that meeting with her, and I was crying in my car, just saying, Lord, I hand this to you. I'm so sorry that I've been, wrestling through this, and that, not sorry that I've been wrestling with it, but I just went ahead and said, I'm so sorry that I did do these things, and I just know that I'm forgiven for them because you have forgiven me. And from that day on, literally that day.
The next time we had sex, you were able to...
It was great.
Yeah.
And we'll just keep that. But...
Bev Lucky, you're a hero always in my book.
Yes. And actually, speaking of women that have given some wisdom and help in our sex life, and I had a friend, Audrey, who actually told me before we got married, don't fake it. Like, as women, I think we love our husbands and we want it to be great for them. And we're afraid that if we are honest, that it could somehow make it hard for our spouse. But really, when we're honest, that's when we can actually see the best gains in our sex lives. If you're hiding things and you're burying them and you're not really telling your husband how it is, he knows that it's not exactly right. Like, we've been married 5.5 years and you're already like learning my cues so well, just in daily life. Like, I could be in the kitchen and you're like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I didn't even say anything. How can you tell? You know? Yeah. And so of course they're going to be able to tell. And something in our marriage that's so beautiful. And I know that maybe not every marriage is like this, but I know this is what we should strive for, is it is beneficial for both of us. And it's a self-serving time. It isn't, like you said, what can I get out of this? But it is supposed to build both of us up. And we really do. We know that sex is vulnerable. You are presenting yourself to each other. And we protect that. We do not, we know that there's going to be nothing about that shared to others. Like, our relationship sexually is for us. Yeah. And it's protected.
And you don't, like, if you ever did, something silly or dumb in the bedroom, you don't like go and share that with other people and laugh about what your spouse did. That would be terrible. Yeah.
There's a protection there. And then there's also this protection verbally. We do not cut each other down. We build each other up in your appearance and your performance. There is no...
You go all Song of Solomon with it. Yes. You talk about how beautiful you are, how attractive it is. You put your words into the sex act as well. Yeah. So a couple things there. One, you brought up, if you're not having an orgasm, you need to talk about it. You need to discuss why that is, and you might need to go get counseling. Honestly, there could be other deeper issues.
And don't settle for that. I feel like as women, sometimes we're just kind of like, it's just not for me. But it is for you. And you can keep trying and working together so that it is beneficial for both of you. And honestly, as women, it's so much more than just physical. There's so many layers emotionally. And I'm not saying guys don't have that too, but I know as women, it's just, there's so much going on, you know? And so work through that. And like I said, we were reading books. We were not making progress. Like, we were struggling there. And I'm just so thankful for that.
You mentioned masturbation. I struggled with masturbation before we got married too. And pornography was a big part of my story. And some people say it was masturbation wrong. Well, a lot of times I know for me, when I'm masturbating, I was thinking lustful thoughts. And lust is obviously condemned. And so that's definitely not good. But also another thing about masturbation is you're making sex really about yourself and about your pleasure, when sex is supposed to be designed to be a giving act and to be about the other person. And so that's one thing why I think, since our marriage, I haven't done that. So it's great. Like, I think that's just a good part.
And even before, though. For years before.
Yeah, for years before. Thank God. Another thing is how you can have, let's just talk about, like, practical advice. Like we recommend, and I think I read it, or in something we watched, that you should have sex with the lights on. That you shouldn't do it. Do the dark. Men are definitely visual, and I enjoy seeing all the visuals with the lights on, and I feel like it helps you think. Like, when I think of sex, I think of my wife, not think of some other image or pornography. And if you're struggling with anything pornography, romance novels, and get that all out. You don't want any of that in your marriage, and you want to think of sex as an act of worship unto God. You think like, thank God for this gift. Thank God for my wife right now. As you're doing it. So.
And I think what you said too about romance novels there is a big deal. I know that there are romance novels that are not inappropriate, but I think the idea of romance novels, it captures our attention as women, and we start to long for this ideal man that usually a woman actually dreamed up in the book. They're not even a real person, but we start to think like that is what love is supposed to be and what it's supposed to look like. And even if you're reading romance novels that don't have sexual content, it can start to really work its way into your heart of what to expect. And then if you are reading romance novels with sexual content, just know, I have been there, and I know that's not a place that God has for you to be. So And why do I say that? I'm not just trying to be like some snob or something like that. This is an area that we see over and over again in Christian culture that we feel like is getting compromised on, that we think, oh, it's not a big deal, and it's going to make us more intimate in the bedroom because we're reading these things. But that is not beneficial. We see a lot of things that can come out of these types of novels where people will start to harm each other. And there's this whole BDSM culture that is not biblical. Sex should be something that is mutually beneficial. And if you are hurting each other, that isn't mutually beneficial. If you walk away with bruises or with, we don't have to go into all the potential harm there, but I'm just trying to say this is an area that as women, God has created sex to be beautiful and to be fun, but it is not meant for harm. And so for me, as I've shared with just the masturbation and the novels that I allowed myself to be exposed to and to read some of, I think it had the potential, if it had been brought into our marriage, to be detrimental. And so if that is you, this is not, hey, I'm condemning you for that. But hey, feel some conviction here, because God has something so much better for your sex life than trying to copy what you see in a book. Yeah. That is actually meant to be arousing and spicy for you as you're reading it. But that is not a healthy arousal. Yeah. It's not God honoring. Yeah. You might need to clarify that.
No, like a couple things.
So many thoughts
on like how pornography and stuff can get into your marriage. Like I think like it's tempted to want to be like what you see in Hollywood or like any type of softcore stuff of like chains or like whipping or ropes or like anal sex. Like all that I think is not part of God's design for Christian marriage and what marriage sex should be. And so I think you should need to get those.
Or like capturing. There's like so many different things that that our society is trying to say, like, this is sexy.
When it's a distortion on what God has made.
And I think part of this is that we're not really leaning in to our sex as married Christians. We are settling for mediocrity in this area, and then we're going to outside sources to get turned on because we haven't created enough of a sex life here. You know, when people say, like, if the grass looks greener on the other side, water your own lawn. Well, if you feel like you're reading these books and you're like, oh, this is what turns me on. Well, maybe take some time to really get it going with your own
and stop even looking at the other lawns.
Yes, yes. And also, like you mentioned, being honest of, hey, maybe we could have you take the shower, or be kind, be like, let's go shower together, babe, or something. But do something for each other, and know that your sex life is so much more than just right there in the bedroom. How do you talk to each other outside of the bedroom? Yeah. How are you talking to each other in front of other people? Yeah,
your emotional intimacy, your spiritual intimacy.
Are you talking?
All that plays into how great your sex life is.
And are you having fun experiences together? Are you each other's best friend?
Are you dating each other?
Are you taking that time to really pour into just your relationship? Because we were talking about this the other day, and we feel like your sex life is a reflection of the rest of your relationship. If you've got a strong relationship in all the other categories, most likely your sex life should be doing okay. And if it's not, well, then work on that. But if you notice, hey, if we're like really looking at our lives, emotionally, we're not being there for each other. You've been really struggling with this situation with family or with this thing at work, and I haven't leaned in to let you know that I'm supporting you, that I love you, that I'm listening to you. Start there. Yeah. So
just on that, so in 1 Corinthians 7, it talks about that you should get married because of the sexual morality or culture, and then it says that a husband doesn't have authority over his own body, but the wife has authority over her body, and the husband has authority over his wife's body, and that you shouldn't deprive each other, actually, and that you should be regularly having sex. And so, usually, but it can go both ways, but a husband's like, well, my wife's not having sex with me. Like, what am I supposed to do about that? And so just some things on that, like, she's just exhausted, you know, like, are you helping with the kids? Are you helping pick up around the house? Are you helping with the chores, the dishes, the vacuuming, all that stuff? If she's not feeling love and cared for you in those areas and you're not helping and she's so tired, I mean, of course she's not going to want to have sex. And so just trying to be intentional in those areas is the one thing I would say for that.
Yeah, and I think just kind of as we're wrapping up here, there's definitely a couple things that we have said over this podcast that sex should be. But I also want to say we are talking to you as a married couple, that we delight in each other. There's no abuse. There's no verbal abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical. There's none of that.
There's never
in
been
our
any
marriage.
cheating or anything
There
like that.
is none of that.
But even if you have all that stuff, you're able to get here, but you just have so
Yes.
much more to work through, and it's going to take time.
And like we said, God is the Redeemer. And so please don't hear this and feel condemned, or I'm so dirty because I've done these things and I can't go a different way. And honestly, if you disagree with what we're saying, leave it in the comments. Tanner checks these and can reach back out with you and have a conversation. But I just want to say, you can have an awesome sex life, and that is God honoring. It is not something that God is blushing about or ashamed by. He created sex, and he's a fan of married sex. Like, he wants that for his people. He wants us to delight in it and to have a fun time. That is not, I think our culture wants to say, like, actually, we came up with sex. But no, God designed this.
That's
so
right.
enjoy it.
Amen.
As married couples. Like, we get to be people that say, God created this for us. He wants us to have fun together. And so, sex, like you said, it should be something that happens often. It should be something that is fun and enjoyable and spicy together, but not spicy like I'm going to hurt you, but spicy like check out.
Let's be playful and try something new. You know?
Yeah, like that it should be romantic and fun. And anyway, we hope to encourage you with that.
We're cheering for you and rooting for you, and we know you can do it. God
Hope you
bless
have a lot of fun.
Bye.